Hello, friends. This is Professor Googlom. On my channel, you mostly watch videos about the beautiful world around us. But today, it's a little different. What is it about? Keep watching to find out. Vostochny Cosmodrome. The Vostochny Cosmodrome was supposed to be the last jewel in Russia's crown, but instead it was marred by several financial scandals and arrests of corrupt officials. Russia needed a big win to save the reputation of the Cosmodrome. So there was a belief that a second flight from the new facility on November 27, 2017, would change the situation. But that didn't happen. As in all launch disasters, everything looked normal until the last minute. The payload of the flight, a meteorological satellite called Meteor M21, was to go into orbit around the planet. The rocket was waiting for the perfect moment to engage the engine and ferry the satellite into the desired orbit. Unfortunately, the signals from the satellite disappeared the moment it separated from the rocket. The satellite did not pull away from the Earth, but headed toward it. The meteor was programmed to stabilize its orientation in front of any obstacle, but in order to do so, it had to be aimed in the right direction. As a result, the stage ejected itself and the payload into the Atlantic Ocean instead of orbiting the Earth. What a failure! Miscalculation. Multi-stage rockets can be compared to a relay team in the atmosphere, where each stage races against the thickness of the Earth's atmosphere. On May 22, 2009, the payload was a Russian military satellite. At the separation stage of the two stages, everything looked good. It was a night launch and the people of Kazan saw something that looked like a glowing comet crossing the sky, with a plume trailing behind it. But failure is often unexpected, especially when launching a rocket. Unfortunately, the third stage failed to fulfill its role and shut down 3 seconds early. Each unburned second resulted in a loss of altitude. The stage burned for 9 minutes to reach an altitude of 208 kilometers, then trailed for 15 minutes before the engine re-engaged to lift the payload higher. However, the upper stage ran out of fuel early. The first satellite observers from NORAD noticed that the satellite's orbit was changing. When you run out of fuel, even a few seconds early, things don't go according to plan. Chinese Hyperbola 1. The fourth Hypebol took off from the Jiuquan Space Center in the Gobi Desert on May 13, 2022. The first shots of the launch showed that everything was fine at first, but after a few moments there was an unusual silence. The launch was accompanied by something quite different instead of a successful launch message. Beijing Aerospace confirmed the loss of the rocket and its payload, saying it was due to a problem with the altitude control system. Without directional control, a self-destruct command was activated. Separation alarm. On December 5, 2015, the Russian military received a harsh engineering lesson. The Russian Aerospace Defense Forces launched the Canopus Street satellite to conduct meteorological research. The launch went well until the second of the two satellites tried to separate from the rocket. It failed because only 3 of the 4 clamps holding the satellite to the Volga upper stage opened. The remaining clamp held the spacecraft and the engineers were helpless because there was no emergency separation plan. After such mishaps, it was easy to identify mistakes that should have been avoided, right? But it's not that simple. Spacecraft design is about keeping things simple and compact, and redundant systems create weight and complexity if they're not used. Plus, not all contingencies can be foreseen. Cold-blooded blueprints. The launch of 2 Galileo navigation satellites on a Soyuz STB rocket proceeded normally until 35 minutes after liftoff from French Guiana. The 4-stage Fregat serves as both a spacecraft and a rocket. It carried engines that steer the craft as it moves between orbital salvos of the main engine. Unfortunately, something dangerous was happening inside the frigate during this particular launch. 2 lines were running along the same support element. One line contained hydrazine and the other cryogenically cold helium. The incredible cold from the helium was spreading along the support element, causing the hydrazine to cool so much that it turned into a block of ice. This caused it to clog the system, resulting in the spacecraft losing maneuverability and the 2 satellites ending up in the wrong orbit. Fatal mismanagement. In 2003, Brazil aspired to be part of the countries launching rockets into space. Given its favorable location near the equator, which provides extra lift for rockets, the country had every chance of doing so. However, these ambitions suffered a major setback in August of that year when a VLS-1 rocket exploded at the spaceport in the city of Alcantara. The catastrophic detonation leveled the rocket's launcher, turning the 10-story high structure into a pile of mangled metal. Subsequent investigation of the incident revealed a number of disturbing factors. The explosion occurred because volatile gases accumulated, sensors failed, and electromagnetic interference occurred on the rocket. The exact electrical discharge that ignited one of the rocket's 4 solid rocket boosters has not been conclusively determined. The report focused on the management and operation of the spaceport. The investigation found a lack of detailed risk management throughout the spaceport's operations. It was also noted that personnel were overworked due to project requirements. In addition, the limited budget allocated to the space program also affected the level of safety and technological measures that could be implemented. The devastating explosion brought Brazil's ambitious space program to a long halt. Flight over target. Arianespace SA is a company that provides space launch services on a commercial basis. It has extensive experience and a proven track record. The company's launch on January 25, 2018 from a jungle spaceport in French Guiana was an expectedly successful mission. But something unusual happened. 9 minutes and 26 seconds after liftoff, the command center lost telemetry data on the payload. The satellites should have been in a different position, but their trajectory was significantly off course, and tracking stations around the world were unable to locate them. Later that night, spaceport staff breathed a sigh of relief when signals from both spacecraft reappeared. The signals indicated that the satellites were in orbit and functioning normally. Inconsistent weather. Engineer Alan McDonald recommended to NASA that no shuttle should launch if the temperature was below 12 degrees. A local report showed a temperature of 4 degrees, so the specialist did not give his approval. The main cause for concern was the O-ring that surrounds the rocket booster for sealing purposes. McDonald predicted that the O-ring could fail during launch, which could lead to an explosion on the launch pad. However, despite the fears, Challenger took off on schedule and did not explode on liftoff. When the O-ring rupture occurred, the temperature during startup was 2 degrees Celsius. The explosion caused the seal to leak gases. Fortunately, before the flames could spread, the breach self-sealed as the rocket's solid exhaust, which produces aluminum oxides, filled the void. During ascent, Challenger encountered strong winds and within a minute the damaged O-ring was ruptured by flames escaping from the solid rocket booster. The aerodynamic forces quickly tore the spacecraft apart, resulting in tragedy and the deaths of all crew members on board. It was a sad day that could have been avoided. Outdated procedure. On December 5, 2010, Russians anxiously awaited the launch of the latest addition to the constellation of Global Positioning System satellites. Inside the modernized version of the Proton-M launch vehicle were 3 GLONASS satellites. The chain of disasters began when the technicians refueling the rocket did not know that the tanks of this version were larger than those of the previous Proton. They used an outdated tank filling procedure and overfilled the upper stage with 1.5 tons of liquid oxygen, and this mistake proved fatal. Friends, don't hesitate to write comments under the video about what else you would like to learn. I will definitely fulfill your wish. Bye for now.